But just give it 2 minutes so that people trickle in. Welcome back from the lunch break. I hope you enjoyed the food. I think the lemon posset was a real highlight that caused the second queue at the food station. So welcome back, and the afternoon sessions are going to dig deeper into a lot of the things that are happening in practice. Often when we work across the ecosystem in the CE countries, every second stakeholder asks, but do you have a case study? And every time we go, well, yes, but then some people don't want to share their case study because it's, proprietary knowledge. We found that a lot in the industrial sector, so that was a very interesting finding of ours that people didn't really want to share. But today we have some of the most exciting, actually, sessions by some of the driving entities, companies in this region. So we will start with Panattoni, Pavel Sovička, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited for your presentation.
Thank you. Works. Good afternoon. How was the lunch? Amazing? I've missed it. Oh, okay, all right. My name is Pavel Sovička. I'm running Panattoni in Czech Republic and Slovakia. We develop industrial space. I'm not ESG specialist. I'm not the environmentalist. I'm a businessman. So I need ESG specialist, Pavel Vojtík, he's sitting somewhere just here in front, to guide me through the challenges which we see. But we as a developer are here to deliver solutions which are future-proof. In the past, it was about the technical elements, technical aspects of the buildings. These days is how can we make it more environmental friendly and sustainable? And this is a challenge which we see is going to come despite the discussions whether Donald Trump will change the world. He's changing, I'm not sure in the best way. But the whole world is going to decarbonize. We have case study later on in the presentation, which is unique, so we are not afraid to share it, because there's not much to offset in that program anymore, because we consumed it all. But let's see what we do. Yes. By 2050, the built environment should be without any carbon emissions. Yeah? That's a pretty challenging task, but we believe it's achievable, not in straight way, but there will have to be exceptional measures taken to get there. At the moment, the main aim of all the owners, occupiers, is how we can reduce our operational carbon footprint. That's the main task. We are already delivering buildings with the heat pumps without any connection to the fossil fuels for heating. So really the change will be quick. In the operational carbon footprint, with the new assets, it will be very quick. With the old assets, that will be rather challenging, but we believe that with the new stock, it will be achievable pretty quickly. And there's a forecast by 2040 that the issue will be the embodied carbon in the materials which we use. And at the moment, 40% of the total carbon emissions is related to the real estate sector. So majority of that will be linked to the embodied carbon footprint. Why do we care? As said, we deliver industrial infrastructure, industrial buildings, logistics buildings in large scale. So in the last 3 years, if you combine all our competitors in Europe, they haven't built the same volume like we did. We collect the data. Pavel is great in sharing and taking the information from the system and evaluate what we have to do to deliver the buildings which will maintain the value or ideally grow in value. That's important for the banks, for our investors, and customers as well. There we go. So certification, that was the first step. Yeah? With BREEAM, we have started in 2013-14 in the Czech Republic. At the moment, a lot of buildings is being certified to BREEAM Outstanding in our portfolio, which we deliver and build. The two most environmental friendly buildings based on the BREEAM New Construction International 2016 certification are actually built by us in HEP. So Czech Republic can be proud that we can really lead the way. What are the challenges and opportunities? We see a big change in understanding what means the embodied carbon once the energy performance certificates will include this information. At the moment, it's about the operational, right? We've got really pushed down the numbers to really crazy levels, very low levels. I think by 80% we reduced the CO2 in real consumption. So that's done. But this will really bring pressure on how we build, how we choose the material, and what we can do to be competitive with Europe. This is actually the embodied carbon footprint per square meter in kilograms. This is based on cement, steel, these are also insulation. These are the biggest contributors. And when you look at that, in the Czech Republic, we are on 400 kilograms. In Sweden, we are 212. So we've got double. So when you look how the investors will perceive the product as an industrial building, will they be more interested to invest in Sweden and buy sustainable building or buy it in Czech? And when you look at the aggressive plan, there's a mistake, 2025 is not the target. The target is 2035. They would like to end up, our colleagues, with 31 kilos per square meter, which is ambitious. They have really planned every year. You see that there are different levels which they want to achieve. They are trying to buy green steel, green concrete, offset, all the ways what they can do to reduce the carbon footprint of the building during the construction. We were looking at it. Yeah? In Czech, to get the green steel, yes, you can. But are you happy to pay for your suit, for your chair, maybe 30% more? well, you will not find many customers which are so ESG oriented and carbon footprint reduction oriented. So we were looking how we can do it, how we can reduce the embodied carbon. We have identified a solution. Pavel was really leading it ahead with the offsets. But we didn't want to just go ahead and buy from European Union offsets and go direct way, but to have local impact. So we were investigating how we could do it. Together with Trili, which is an Austrian company, and with Colorado Mansfeld, we have identified their forests as the great opportunity to improve them, make them future-proof, as we want to make our buildings, and invest into the change of the forest, not into forestation, into change, into increase of the capture of the CO2, which is measured. Can we jump further? So when you look at the capacity of the forest they have in the Czech Republic, they are one of the biggest owners of forest in the Czech Republic. They are located in central Bohemia. It could be by increased capture. That's not the capacity of the forest on its own, but that's the increased capacity if you invest correctly and manage the forest correctly. It's 17,000 tons of CO2 additional capture. So we said, and that's certified by TIF, which is measuring really the impacts on how much really is the absorption of CO2 increase. It's done, and the investment is needed into the forest because of the climate change. The forest on its own can't really win the fight against the climate change. We have to really change how we operate the forests in different ways, invest into them, into infrastructure in the forests, and optimize the harvesting. The forest in the past was only a tool of business or subject of the business. Yeah? How much wood I can get, how much timber, what I can produce, and it was optimized to do as much business as possible. And thanks to the investment, which we have committed to, it will not be necessary. So it can be planned in a way that you can really treat the forest as a CO2 capturing and improve it and prepare it for the future. Just for your imagination and really bringing the hard facts, the area of the forest is 16,500 hectares. It's huge. Yeah? If you take the volume where we can increase the additional CO2 capture, you will end up in 17,900 tons. This is just production of CO2 or embodied CO2 in one 40,000 square meters building. The whole market in Czech Republic delivers 600,000 to 1 million square meters a year. So this is one of the ways where you can offset and improve the environment, but it's not the ultimate tool, how we can achieve the change and how we can offset, because we will run out of forests. But what this shows, this example, is that if the state prepares a program where they connect business communities, real estate market with the forest owners, the forest can be really future-proof, and there can be a lot of investment from private sector to improve our environment. So we believe that this shows the way, and that's how Colorado Mansfeld also treats it, that this shows the way how this could work on large scale. This is just friction of the potential market. Just for information, it's approximately 800,000 euros a year. Yeah, so that's the investment. We were looking how we could reduce the CO2 directly in the construction, not only by the offsets. These are our buildings in Graz. We built with wood in Germany, in France, in Sweden, in many countries. When you look how much more you have to invest per square meter into the building to use the wood, in Austria, it's not more expensive than steel or concrete. In Germany, it's not more expensive. In France, you invest €5 a square meter. Fine, right? In Czech, We were the first to get the permit to build large-scale industrial with wood in Pilsen area. It took us 1.5 years or something like that. It was really challenging, and Pavel was really fighting with the fire authority. We ended up in 90 euros a square meter. Yeah? And that's just for the wood in the roof. So it doesn't make any sense to build from wood in the Czech Republic, because you will see that it's like 15% of the overall cost of the project just to get this wooden structure. So it doesn't make any sense, because no customer will bear this cost. It's impossible. So our next step is to push on the government, maybe next government, to just think whether really the fire burns differently in Czech than in France, than in Austria, than in Germany. I think it burns the same. Just we make every, I would say, regulation golden-plated. We really make it as strict as possible, which then brings additional cost. And we believe that that's the future of the construction, where we can reduce the carbon footprint, because really it's not possible to get the green steel, green concrete on affordable pricing in the Czech Republic compared to Sweden or countries where you have a lot of the green energy. So when you look at that, we have proof in our numbers that the really operational carbon footprint is by 85% reduced. So really there's no much we can do to reduce that. But we believe that the embodied carbon is the next big theme, and will be a lot of discussions which we see ahead. There's a great example from last month, I think it was this month, where we have finalized the valuation for our project in Karlovy Vary region, where we have option to go net zero carbon with the offsets. And the increase in the value by the valuers was by 2%, which is close or maybe even exceeding the number which you have to invest into the offsets. So it makes sense. You won't make money on it, but we believe that we will make the product, the building, future-proof, not only for us, for our investors, for the bank, because ultimately the portfolio, when you will really show the energy certificates with the embodied carbon, you will be, I think, glad to finance the projects which are having zero on the paper, which is diluting the rest of the portfolio, but also for our customers which are in the building, which are, in this case, it's an automotive company which decided to go without any fossil fuels and really go for BREEAM outstanding and make this property, I would say, flagship of their industrial portfolio. So we believe it's a win for all. We can invest into our forests, bring the carbon footprint down, and help the nature to capture more. And we believe that this shows as a program possibility for the state, for the Czech state, to prepare really programs on cooperation of the developers, construction companies, and the business on its own, with, to invest into our nature, not to buy just offsets straight away. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Do we have any questions, just quickly for Pavel? No. Okay, I mean, that's good, because that allows us maybe to catch up the 5 minutes that we're running behind. But I do have to say, Pavel, I loved your presentation. It also shows, again, the contextualization and the differences in terms of how context-specific sustainability is. I think real estate sector is one of the most important elements that people don't realize. Somebody told me that real estate for humans is like water for fish. We don't even realize we're inside it until we really hate the space. So I think it's very, very important, and it's great to see the kind of different types of solutions and activities that companies are doing to try and also improve the legal and regulatory framework that would enable that pragmatism that we heard from other panels. So now we move on to the next TED-style talk. In this case, we have Maciej Gomółka joining us from KPMG. He's Associate Director. And he's going to try to show us what is actually happening with with technology and ESG reporting from different tools for different companies, etc. So, Maciej, welcome to the summit, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Linda. First of all, I'm very happy that I am here. I have at least two reasons for that. First of all, I lived in Prague for almost 3 years, so it's always good to be back here. Second of all, the more important, I would say, we are sitting now in a conference room that is called like my 6-month daughter, Aida. So it was kind of personal for me. Today, I'm gonna briefly talk about our observations, KPMG observations on both ESG reporting and collecting data and digitalizing ESG reporting. I think we have a very practical knowledge, both from the perspective of auditor, because we helped a lot of companies from so-called first wave to audit non-financial reports, but also from advisory point of view. So we advised many companies, especially I'm representing Polish region, but there were also Central European companies. And we were guiding them through the whole process of ESG reporting. So starting from double materiality analysis, going through carbon footprint calculations, then EU taxonomy reporting, collecting data, and preparing ESG report. And we collected a lot of information talking to our clients, and we started to wonder, I don't know if it doesn't work, okay. So we asked them, what are the challenges? What challenges do you have in reporting and collecting the data? We were, I would have to mention it, we were also working with the companies from the second wave. So sometimes the companies are smaller and they have less FTE, they have less turnover, and they are less prepared in reporting. Because I believe that here we are in environment, in this conference, that everybody is more developed in ESG reporting and sustainability itself. So I will also give you some samples from less developed companies. So first of all, key challenge, data sources. There are a lot of data, we know that. There are a lot of data points to collect, more than 1,000 data points in ESRS. There are a lot of data coming through the whole organization because we are talking about ES and G. So that was the main obstacle for the companies. Then process design and workflow. Companies didn't even think that they would have to collect this data. So they had to think about the process, how it goes, of data collection, what is the workflow behind it, and it was very tricky for them. Then responsibility and division of work. So questioning ourselves, do I have to collect this data or my colleague will collect it? Is my colleague going to deliver the data on time or not? So another issue. Misunderstandings and file versions. We all know that when we work on a cloud or different solutions, that sometimes it's really difficult to manage all these files, to aggregate them, to make one file out of 20 files that have been collected in the whole organization. So that's another big issue. And what is more, risk of human error. Of course, we always face errors, human errors. Thinking about formula, wrong formula in a file, for instance, or summing up numbers incorrectly. So that's another big issue. But the most challenging thing was data collection itself. This is actually a real questionnaire that we've asked our clients, and you can see that 70% of them said that data collection process is the most challenging thing in ESG reporting for them. So what is the solution? It sounds simple, automate, right? We've been always as a civilization striving to automate data to make it more effective. to optimize it. So here we have the example of calculations. You can see that we started from written calculations, then we had different machines to make the calculations. And you can see that our development is accelerating, like everything in our world is accelerating. So it took us only 10 years between electronic calculator to personal computer. And now, of course, we have different types of software. We have AI kicking in. So it is accelerating. However, when we think about ESG reporting, this icon comes to our mind, right? What is interesting, when I was preparing this presentation, I found out that we have something in common with Microsoft Excel. So this year in September, I'm turning 40, and so Microsoft Excel is. So you can imagine, that's a tool, I'm laughing at it, but it's a really good tool, right? We're all using it every day. We're all using it in our personal life. We're all using it at our work, right? But this is not efficient and not sufficient, I would say. This is the data that we collected in KPMG report. So we make an annual report on digitalization in general and digitalization in ESG. So you can see that 90% of companies, 90% of ESG experts are using Excel sheets, right? So there is only one king, like it's written here. There is only 22% of companies that use specialized ESG software, so 1/5, let's say. The rest is using some environments that are using in the company, so for instance, SAP or Microsoft Sustainability Manager. But like we concluded from the challenges that I was talking about, there are some benefits that are not met by Excel. Excel cannot make the whole thing, right? It cannot make the process more efficient. It cannot minimize risk of data errors. Of course, we can try to build it somehow better, but it's not gonna do the whole job. So companies seem to notice that. And when we asked them last year, because we have every year in Warsaw, we have ESG Market Force site. It's a big conference where there are more than 200 companies involved in it. And we asked them last year if you are considering or planning to implement some tool to digitalize the ESG reporting. And what they said, again, nearly 70% said, yes, we're gonna do it right away, we're planning to do it, or we just started. We had the similar or the same conference last week in Warsaw, and we asked them, so come on guys, what happened after 1 year? Guess how many companies did raise their hand and told us that they implemented a tool? 2, you say? Okay, it is pessimistic, but the real response is 4. So we started to ask ourselves a question: why do we procrastinate? Why we don't do it? And we started to talk to these companies, right? Of course, the responses were, we have time, especially in the omnibus era, right? Just after publishing the omnibus, they said, okay, now we have 2 years more, so we're not gonna do it. We have time, we will see how it goes, the regulations and so on. Then that's my favorite response when we're talking to CEOs of smaller companies. They say, we can handle it without IT solution. They say like, I hire 300 people, they have time, I pay for this time, so they're gonna do it without the IT solution, right? We don't have money. That's another often response. But the problem is that nobody is looking that by making some CapEx higher, then you will lower your OpEx. So the return of investment will be very quick in that case, because you will spend less time on preparation of the report in the future years when you have the process automated. That's exactly what was said today during the panel that we had before. our colleague from Allegro said that it took them a lot of time, right? It's not our priority. That's another response. Of course, there is project 1, project 2, project 3, but automation of ESG reporting is not our priority. This is also an interesting reason. The board of members cannot agree internally. That's another study that we've made, which is saying that there are different perspectives on spending money or on digitalization within the board of members. So when we're talking to CEO, they have different opinion. When we're talking to a CIO or CFO, they have also different opinion on whether to invest in a tool or not. But not to sound too pessimistic, we also talked to the companies who implemented a tool. However, we have a huge spread between saying that the tool can be advantageous, so it's 95% of responses, but only 16% say that it's effective. So we started to ask ourselves, what's wrong? It's 80% difference nearly. So something went wrong, right? Why did it go wrong? That's partially the answer. Wealth of choice. This is the study that we made nearly 2 years ago. We analyzed 450 tools that are having something in common with sustainability. It's not only the ESG reporting, it's also data collection, it's also CBAM reporting, it's also EUDR reporting, it's of course carbon footprint calculations. But I can bet that now, after these 2 years, we have more than double of these solutions, probably something like 800 or something. So we are asking ourselves a question: how to start, how to choose a right tool. And what is even more difficult is that when we think about our IT architecture of companies, sometimes we can conclude that one tool is not enough, that you have to, for instance, make one tool for data collection and aggregation, another tool for calculations, another tool for making a narrative report. So it's becoming really, really difficult for the companies to make a right choice. When we talk to our clients, or the clients that we want to make an offer for digitalization, they are telling us mainly 3 criteria. One, of course, price. The lowest, the better, especially in this part of Europe. Then another, time of implementation. So the faster, the better. And the third one maybe is that they are taking into consideration the environment they work in. So for instance, if you have SAP, they will be going for SAP most probably or something. But that's not the correct approach that the companies should take when considering implementation of digital tool. So here are the 4 steps. It may sound kind of trivial or simple. It's not rocket science, but this is how we recommend the companies should start when they think about implementation. So first of all, we have to do somehow a pre-selection of these tools. So shortlisting 450 by answering yourself a question: what do we need and who we are? So there are different tools for different types of companies. There are tools that would be better for a company that is one production unit company. Different tool for a group of companies that have to gather all the data from, let's say, 20 or 30 companies. Companies with developed upstream and downstream, so value chain. It's also a different type of solution. And of course, we have to answer ourselves the question: what is our goal? So do we want to make a report by tool? Do we want to collect the data, or we may want to calculate CO2, for instance? And what assets are we ready to engage? And we're not talking only about money, but we're talking about time of our people, right? The second step, which is also an internal work and is very important in my view, and not many companies even think about it when implement the tools, is get to know your process. I'm talking about process of data collection mainly, right? So we have to think about it, define it, and describe the process of data collection by drawing the process boundaries. What data we're gonna collect, so what's our input, what are the sources of the data, where we're gonna take it from, what we want to get at the beginning, so what's gonna be the output, who is gonna supply the information, who's gonna be the customer, so what we want to achieve. Do we want to report to our board, or do we want to make automate our ESG reporting process? And the last point is also very important. I will just say more about it in a while. Methodology. So how it is done. Why is that? The criteria. It's another step. Selection of criteria. And I already said about price. So TCO. Already said about time of implementation. But there are three things that I would like to mention here, which are very important in my view. First is auditability. That's super important. That means that when auditor comes to your company and they ask you, what is this data? Where does it come from? How did you calculate it? How did you aggregate this data? You have to know all these answers so that the auditor will be able to audit the data. If you don't have it, it means that you have a black box, that you ordered an IT tool that is a black box and you have a problem. Another second thing is tool flexibility. It's super important, especially that we are talking about ESG, because like every year or even more often, the regulations change. So we don't want to start investing in a tool and after half a year, even before we finish the project, we will come to the conclusion that we need another tool because the rules have changed, right? So it's super important that the flexibility and further development is quite easy in this tool. And the third thing is this know-how and post-integration advisory. This is also very important because companies, especially smaller companies, that they don't have this know-how, this sustainability know-how in their organization in-house, they keep forgetting about it. So they say, we're gonna buy an IT tool and later it will make a report for us. It's not the way it works, right? You have to analyze the data points. We are talking about very specified knowledge. So when especially smaller companies planning to implement a tool, they have to think whether they have this knowledge in-house or they would have to outsource it. And the best way to outsource it is to buy it with the software that they are implementing. So after these three steps, we can then make, let's say, the assessment of these IT tools. So we are having criteria, we are giving them weights, and then we are making some priorities. We are shortlisting the tools that we will try to develop, and then we can include them in RFP. So basically, these 4 steps are basics, and I would say if every company goes after these 4 steps, then they would make IT implementation more efficient, smarter, that's for sure. And just to sum up, because I don't know how much time do I have, but it's just the last sentence that I wanted to say, is that I wanted to comment on Omnibus, because we were saying about Omnibus many times, and I would like to refer to the companies, especially to the companies that are not sure whether they will have to report in the future, talking about this second wave of ESG reporting. So we see, and when we talk to these companies, we recommend them to use this time of 2 years, not to wait and do nothing because we have the stop the clock policy, but to rethink and reconsider the approach to sustainability and ESG reporting, which includes also digitalization. So they can use these 2 years to make a smart decision on digitalization because it will help them in the future. Thank you so much. I'm happy to talk to you when we have a break, and it was really nice talking to you. Thank you.
Great presentation.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think that was a very good overview of how to work around the digital tools. I do find it interesting that the omnibus keeps coming up, and I know that a lot of you in the audience do feel the frustration daily with people saying, oh, well, we're not sure, we're just going to sit and wait. It's natural. I, as a business owner, would do the same. However, I think this is going to change very, very soon, because I can tell you that the several parts of the European Commission are working non-stop to finalize the omnibus as soon as possible. So frustration is not only felt by you, but also inside the Commission, because what is happening is that so many other files that are quite urgent have been paused. And this is creating a lot of frustration in different parts of the system, because they have their own workload, and all of a sudden you have to deal with the omnibus, and they also have seen the backlash from the early adapters in the market that, this is uncertainty, etc. So at least there is some hope. But with that, we will move on to the next presentation, and that's coming from a different part of the system. So I have the great pleasure to welcome back to the summit Marcus Pugh-Smith. He's a client portfolio manager at Goldman Sachs Asset Management, and he's going to tell a little bit more about their transition work. So we did mention earlier in the day that investors, they have so much power, etc. So let's see what they're doing with the transition. Welcome, Marcus.
Well, afternoon, everyone. I'm going to pick up on one of the words Linda mentioned there, which is hope. And I really hope that this session, coming at things from a slightly different angle to the other great case studies that we've heard today, is going to shine a little bit of noise on moving beyond some of those words we've heard a lot of competitiveness, of simplification, which of course accrue to the market dynamic here, but how we can look at the outcomes that when all of us put our hand up earlier today to say that sustainability is part of our everyday, how we can work towards those desired outcomes. And amidst all the noise that we're seeing in terms of policy changes globally, not just in Europe, how market dynamics are starting to shift and drive capital and ultimately are the arbiter of where transition is focused today. So how we think about that from an investment perspective and how there's hope in that time in terms of progress. So in terms of key areas that we're going to look at today, I want to shine a quick recap in terms of global changes that we're seeing, not just from an energy policy perspective, but around sustainability as a whole. And then going to come on to how national strength and industrial strength agendas are starting to shift capital more appropriately to where we want to see that, but at the same time, how company dynamics and focusing on margin, cost reduction, and investment in areas most in need of transition is also how we can generate real-world impact. So not just on-paper decarbonisation, not just excluding certain companies from portfolios, how we can work with those companies and try and bring about that decarbonisation that we hope and those outcomes that we hope to achieve. So I know a lot of the items on this slide are going to be very familiar to everyone here, but I'm going to pick up on what Eva mentioned earlier in terms of the fragmentation that we see today across the energy policy landscape. Now, we've heard a little bit on the example of China and their export orientation approach to certain industries around EV and solar. I don't need to dwell on the US. We all know what's going on there in terms of energy first agenda and focus on these buzzwords. But honing in on the EU specifically, not just looking at policy today, but even around regulatory approaches to investments. There's a very, very key bit of regulation going live tomorrow, the ESMA naming guidelines for fund commitments. It's a miracle I'm here today. I don't know why I wasn't chained to my desk to work on that, but that's just another example of how this simplification agenda is flowing through the investment universe at the same time as the company universe here. But looking at Europe a little bit more specifically, I think when we see the publication of the German Infrastructure Act, when we see the simplification and key details of Omnibus coming out, what we're looking at really here is an inflection point in terms of power demand. Power demand is going to be overall a key driver in terms of transition over the next number of years. Data centers are going to be a huge part of that. We're forecast from our research team to see an increase of around 160% of power demand globally from 2023 to 2030, driven by data centers. Almost a third of EU power demand is expected to come from data centers. Now that's obviously going to cause a huge shift in terms of company capex, the durability of that capex from companies, but also an opportunity from the investment standpoint, an opportunity from the transition and business model shift standpoint. At the same time, we see that focus on national strength in particular countries, again playing into that. I read a crazy stat recently around German power demand today is currently flat with 1990, the year of reunification. So really there is a huge opportunity in terms of the company transition and focusing on some of these more technologies that are driving the power demand and shifts in energy of today. So, skipping more slides on policy, I want to drill into this from an investment perspective. How do we think about this as asset managers and how we can play a role in channeling the allocation of capital to areas that we deem most in need of transition? So what we're showing on the slide here is an exercise that we did in terms of identifying the top 5 GICS industries by contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions. So that's emissions entirely across the supply chain, scope 1, 2, and 3, looking at them from a GDP perspective. So that's utilities, unsurprisingly energy, that's autos and component parts, capital goods, and materials. Now, as we're highlighting on this slide, which is their share of an approximate metric for global GDP, they are pivotal to our way of life, those sectors. They contribute almost 40% of global GDP. They're not going away anytime soon. They're here to stay. And it's companies in those very sectors, many of whom are in the room, that are making a huge amount of progress in terms of their transition, not just their energy transition, their environmental transition. Those very same 5 industries that are responsible for upwards of 80% of global greenhouse gas emissions are also responsible for upwards of 90% of global waste and global water withdrawal. They only represent a small fraction of global markets. They're only around 20% of global markets, but contribute 40% of GDP. So what can we do about those from an investment perspective? How can we support the transition and avoid emissions being contributed to the world, avoid waste, and avoid water? Well, for us, I think this is a conversation that many will be familiar here in terms of backlash towards sustainability topics and the simplification of ESG as an exercise where you just lean on exclusions, where you don't own certain parts of the market and you tick that box. That is not doing enough. That is simply just passing the conversation on and not focusing on what we can do at hand here. And what we're saying is that it's not an approach to completely rip up the rulebook on climate investing, but how can we work with those companies that are contributing, that were inherently excluded from portfolios, to try and be the drivers of change in the future. And as I said, many of these companies are going to be around for years to come, but the market is perhaps unfairly penalizing their perceived transition risk. So we think there's a huge opportunity to work with these companies across the entirety of their environmental footprint, so waste, water, and emissions as a starting point, and monitor that progress over time from a quantitative and a qualitative perspective, and try and see that appreciation in shareholder value at the same time. The good news with all of this is that we are seeing premiums rewarded to companies that are making progress on their transition. Now, there's a lot of fuzzy lines on this slide. All you need to note is the top one and the bottom one. And what we're showing here is the valuation premium that a company receives that is doing well in terms of their transition. So we did an exercise looking at the entire global market, quintiling the top performers from a transition perspective against the bottom performers. How are we measuring transition? We're looking at emissions targets, emissions performance and execution against those targets, capital allocation commitments, compensation-linked incentives for management. And what we found is that the top performers here, that 16% you see at the top, are meaningfully rewarded with a valuation premium compared to the bottom performers. What's particularly interesting about this chart is when you flip it around and just focus on disclosure, so those companies that are pledging and deferring, it's the inverse relationship. They're not being rewarded with that same premium. So what we really want to highlight here is those companies that are spending and investing are being rewarded in the market for their transition. Now, drilling a little bit more detail, what's a good example we can provide here? in the EU context, this is a company when I tell you that they've got the highest amount of EU taxonomy-aligned CapEx. I'm sure we're very familiar with who they are in the utilities sector. But this is a little flavor of how we can think about them from an investment perspective and partner with them over time. So what are the problems they face in terms of decarbonisation in the utilities sector? Looking at their facilities, sourcing more renewable power. Looking at water, can they treat and recycle the water in their systems? Waste, can they think about different ways of measuring waste, setting targets and recovering that waste at the same time? Can we monitor those targets? Can we speak to the company and build a dialogue to try and advance progress in these areas? Now, the company is a very easy example to give here because of the extent of the capex they've invested towards transition technologies. But in only 2019, they had almost 90% of their energy mix coming from fossil fuels. Today, that's as low as 50%. So we've seen a huge amount of progress over the last 6 years. What's also interesting about this company, and it's a phrase we continually come back to as investors, is the focus on capital discipline. How are they thinking about allocating capital? And is that being allocated effectively and in areas that we view as contributing but not throwing money down the drain? Now, when you see capex allocation revisions, focusing away from areas such as US offshore wind, which might be challenged in today's environment, that further builds our confidence in the company's management and our comfort in staying invested with them over time. Now, this is just one example we're providing from the power generation sector, but there's steel was mentioned earlier. Obviously challenges in steel, but the use of electric arc furnaces rather than blast furnaces presents another opportunity to focus on margin and cost and productivity at the company level. Similar examples in the capital goods space, similar examples in autos. Really, in those high-emitting sectors, we think there are synergies available today that can bring about an enormous impact from both the real-world decarbonisation perspective, but also in terms of synergies with the company, driving cost reduction, driving margins, and driving shareholder value. So just to conclude here, what we want to look at is how do we build this together? How do we just take what the company is doing and translate that in a more greater perspective and allocate capital in that respect? So for us, if we're seeking to invest in this as a broader strategy, I mentioned a number of the themes there that we want to focus on in terms of forward-looking metrics. Can we build a quantitative way of assessing company progress in these areas, hold those companies to account, and ultimately be disciplined as investors? Can we monitor those companies from a qualitative perspective? Can we build dialogues and foster change over time? And finally, can we build that in a way that's both attractive to end investors? And I think this is the most interesting part of this entire goal of transition investing, brown to green transition investing, is when you traditionally think about environmental solutions and investing, you think of the companies that are innovating in carbon capture, direct air capture, in cooling, in certain innovative areas. They're fantastic companies, and these are the very clients of the companies in need of transition. So it's effectively a feedback cycle where one company is feeding the other, and we're hopefully seeing greater flow in this direction. When you focus on the brown to green opportunities, there's another element here, which is many of these businesses are considered value businesses from a factor perspective. And another piece of work that our research team looked at in terms of the ESG fund universe as a whole, it's a slightly out-of-date stat now, but upwards of 2 years ago, there was only around 10% of ESG strategies that were designated as value-oriented. The lion's share was all focused on growth or neutral. So with that in mind, we really think that there's an opportunity in terms of transition investing, working with companies from their brown element to the green element across the highest emitting sectors. There's synergies between the company, shareholder value, cost reduction, margin reduction, and that can be done at the same time as driving real-world decarbonisation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marcus. I think it's a very interesting graph, the fuzzy one, showing that globally, at least, some companies are definitely benefiting from decarbonization. That, of course, brings a big question about the structure of the economy, because usually the CE region is massively dominated by small and medium companies and often not listed. And this is a very interesting space to explore in terms of that can be very, very good for economy. Latest research shows that SMEs and mid-caps actually add a lot more jobs than large corporates. And often they also have more accountability towards the direct workforce. We will be exploring some of those things from a banking perspective, etc., tomorrow as well. So the next session will be, I'm actually very excited for this session. I know it's a lot of speakers, but it's a real power panel, pun intended. It's about energy. So if we have a look at who is next up, we have a session that will look at energy transition for competitiveness. And what these people will try to discuss, they are experts and practitioners in their own field. They know a lot. So don't be afraid also to raise your hand and ask some questions. I think this really should be a conversation with the audience. This session will be led by Jakub Skavron. He's the senior advisor to KKR. He also leads the climate and sustainability leaders in Czech Republic. Join him on the stage will be one of my favorite region's girl bosses or women bosses, joining all the way from Budapest, Deputy CEO of Alteo, Anita. We have Zdeněk Obruča, director at KPMG Czech Republic, focusing on utilities. We have Vladimír Hlavinka, group CEO of ORGREZ Group. Also, very excitingly, we have René Nedela, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Industry and Trade, and Martin Michalíček, CEO and founder of sun.Energy. This panel is very exciting also because after the coffee break, we'll hear from another deputy minister. He's one of our advisory board members, Mr. Marek Mora. So it will be interesting to compare notes and discuss and contrast in terms of what the approach is and how the financing is going in Czech Republic. So with that, I would like to invite Jakub to stage, followed by his panelists. So please welcome and give them a warm welcome to this session.
René dělá. Tak kam jdem?
Zdravím.
Tak ještě jdeme si nás ještě dále les. In the middle.
So, good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here today, especially because, as Linda mentioned, we have the very exciting panel, and the reason why it's so exciting is that we structure the panel by all means from conventional power generation, which has been represented by Vladimír Hlavinka, who was board member of Czech and power generation for many, many years, and currently he owns his private business, which is now focusing on decarbonization, which is a great example. We have Deputy Minister from Ministry of Trade and Industry, who is the policy maker. And as you all know, Czech Republic is highly dependent on conventional power at the moment, so we are facing the situation of being ahead of potential decarbonization process. We have the international representation from Hungary. Welcome. And she's gonna speak about the independency and renewable roles in entire energy mix. And finally, we have the great representation from the Big Four, from KPMG. We have Zdeněk, who is giving us the independent view how to all wrap up. Before I will hand over to our speakers, I would like to sort of frame it our discussion. You know what the decarbonization and then competitiveness means in the current world. We should not look at the topic as an island. You know, we are not living on an island. We are living in the EU. We are living on Earth, and the planet at the moment is still very global, and we need to, despite the current geopolitical situation, we need to fight against the other super nations. The competitiveness starting from not only the commodity or the price of the wholesale energy, but as well as the second part of the electricity price build-up, and then this is the regulatory part. To conclude that, I have here a chart, which unfortunately I cannot present to you on a screen behind me, but there's a ranking or the statistic how much the industrial customers is paying for electricity as a whole on the planet. And the most expensive electricity is in UK, which the price in 2023 reached over the $400 per megawatt hour in UK. The second is Germany. I would like to label that these two countries represents half of our energy mix coming from the renewables. As I said, the renewables is not only as a source of the wholesale price, the one element, but renewables brings lots of investments in adjacent infrastructure and in the grid. Compared to electricity price in US and China, when China is roughly around the $50 per megawatt hour, and the US is around the $75 per megawatt hour. So this would be a starting point of my discussion related to competitiveness as well as stability of electricity prices. We experienced on Monday that the electricity prices in the noon in Belgium was minus 500 euros per megawatt hour. All this fluctuation give us lots of instability to, as an industry, as a strategic investors, to put the money into something which we do not see how much we're going to pay for electricity for upcoming years and months. This would be my starting kickoff, how we can deal with that. As a decarbonization, is it just a belief or it's a fundamental must? And how we gonna deal with that? I would kindly ask our lady in our panel to start, because she's coming from Hungary and she has the wide experience with the island operations and independence of the renewables.
Thank you so much. And first of all, I'm so happy to be here. The reason why I'm here because I met through the Women Climate Leaders Network, which has been established by the European Investment Bank, which is focusing for the green transition of SMEs. But as a women leader in energy sector, I have a very difficult role, representing a company which is focusing for energy production, and on the other side for circular economy, because we decided to extend our portfolio not just for the energy production but the whole value chain, because we have, let's say, we have waste from PVs and from wind and from the everyday use what we are producing, like the biogas. The raw material of the biogas is the organic waste. But back to the topic. We can say that nowadays the energy safety and the energy independence, beside many other factors like competitiveness and green transitions, is the most important, because there must be a mix in the energy portfolio for the renewables. You can imagine that before the Ukrainian and Russian war, we realized that, or we understood that energy is just a natural situation that we have. But after the war, we understood that energy is, if we are not independent from the energy, it could cause us problems. We had to face volatility in pricing and also the availability of the energy. So that's why renewables has a significant role in our energy mix and took over the role from the fossil fuels in electricity production, like the wind and the solar panels. I do believe that not just the electrification, but the whole value chain will help us to cover the green transition. And as we are the big players in Hungary in terms of energy storage, because this is the other sector. We are producing the energy, but we have to store it for the future. And I think this is the question how we can answer to the point that energy has to be cheaper. And this is the competitiveness of Europe and of the companies as well.
Vladimír, you have the great experience to having the grip on entire fleet of chess in Czech Republic. And since you left the chess, you established a business which is really like focusing on flexibility, on decarbonization. How you would perceive the situation which we are facing at the moment?
So one little bit correction here. I bought the business here. ORGREZ has 70 years and working on this energy business 70 years. Yeah, I'm not so old here. and this company guided the development of the energy system in Czech Republic these 70 years. Yeah, and every time I have to mention that. The developing energy system, it's something like a long race running, yeah, for more time, yeah. It takes 50 years to develop the system, yeah. And try to find the balance between the installed capacity, how to transit the electricity, operate on the market, yeah. In 1996, we start with liberalization of the market. Just now, we try to starting some transition period. It will take some time, not to be in a hurry. Yeah, we have to develop this transition grid. We have to develop this distribution grid, develop the production portfolio, and not in the end, yeah, develop some kind of different business with electricity. Yeah, that is trading business. Yeah. In the end, yeah, but not during the 10 years. Yeah. The result will be the independency on primary sources of energy, and results will be the new system, yeah. But not to be too nervous that in the interim period, from 5 to 10 years, yeah. Again, this system what we have just now was developed for 50 years, yeah. The goals will be independency as much as is possible, yeah. Will be maybe some cheapest price of energy, yeah. But for me, it's not price for on wholesale market. For me, is a price for final customer, yeah. But we have to step by step develop the system, accumulation, cogeneration, distribution, small distribute energy system, yeah. But just now we are on the starting point, yeah. And I think that a lot of people thinking that the next year we will finish and everything will be ready, yeah. Not. Be quiet, be patient, and we have to develop step by step, yeah.
René, do you agree with the words of Vladimír, and what do you think? Can we prolong the life of the coal in Czech Republic in order to be competitive?
Jakub, first of all, thank you, for the invitation. And a little bit I disagree, what Vladimír said about to be quiet. I don't think so.
No, quiet, yeah. Quiet. Patient, sorry.
Patient is good. I think it's a part of game, we especially in the Czech Republic, that there is no easy way, how to solve the actual situation. For somebody, the decarbonization is an opportunity, for example, for the flexibility sources, that's really, this is a good way, how they can, speed up and how they can increase their business, and there will be interesting profit. For some technologies and sector, this is a nightmare because there are no, I would say, technologies how to make a decarbonization in their sector fast and cheap or for affordable prices. For example, We are discussing about the renewable fuel, non-biological origin, green hydrogen, and there are discussion if we can produce it for 11 or 12 euro per kilogram. But the business sector says, you know, if we will produce it for this, then our products will be not competitiveness. We need, you know, hydrogen for 5, maybe 4 will be the best. So this was first part of your question. Second, how it will be with the coal, you know. Firstly, we are not, you know, thinking about coal, I would say, at our ministry when we will stop the coal. We are thinking a little bit opposite. Let's, you know, try to speed up the permitting for renewables. Let's try to speed up the permitting for grids. Let's make a simplification of the whole procedure. Let's find, you know, funds and money, you know, for this investment. And I would say last legislation is for big gas power plants, because we see that we'll need, you know, some big CCGT or OCGT for balance services and etc. And also we have there like protecting mechanism if we will see that still we will need the coal. So maybe from the perspective of security of supply, maybe we will help. But this is, you know, I would say the last step. Firstly, we are trying, you know, to push forward, you know, these 5 main elements, and we think that if we will push them hardly, then we will not need, you know, to prolong the coal anymore.
René, it is great to hear that the ministry is working actively and intensively on simplification of all the procedures and application process. Martina, you've been representing renewable energy for many, many years. So what is your take to the discussion? Is renewable energy in combination to massive investment in infrastructure competitive, and is it the future?
Jakub, thanks to everybody to have a chance participate in this table. Allow me to maybe comment it from the little bit different piece of the cake, because this is the complex machine. Yeah? This is about the photovoltaics, talking about the renewables, wind power, water, the other resources. What I am now more focusing on is the topic of the securing the cost of the electricity for my own consumption, to be more independent, because of sometimes it's needed, or at minimum for a while, for some time it's needed, and yes, to participate on the environmental aspects. So talking about the photovoltaics, for talking about the Czech Republic, 2 million roofs covering the residential, our houses, our apartments, covering the basically light and commercial and industrial applications. So for these we can cover all of the roofs, making it black and white, because of once I am setting the design and my demand for a little bit future-proof, thinking, will I procure the EV car, maybe will I change something, do I have the swimming pool, whatever. So then I can cover the year, which is not easily to comment to say the year, but year consumption maybe for 60 to 70% consumption generated and covered by the photovoltaic, together to the battery storage, so I can move between the days maximum with the consumption. And if needed, but this is not the goal, and this is my last point, the goal is not to generate additional revenues for my house, for my apartment, most probably even for my company, because of this should be covered by the second piece of the machine, which is the big power generation and transition system and transmission system and distribution system. But on this level, we don't need so much regulation. We don't need so much big support, even from the grid operators and from transmission. And I can easily support, as I said, my first goals. I can easily support decreasing my operation cost, which is the electricity. I can secure my independency, and okay, I can contribute on the emission. I can contribute on the green aspects. So this is the last. So we don't, from this segment, we don't need so much big approach, high-level approach, the big regulatory framework, because of I should focus on my, and I call it the self-consumption, which again supports this big machine. Of course, I need energy, electricity during the winter time, but if the system is well maintained and set up, this is the piece of the...
So in other words, you targeting the island operation, which will be independent on a grid supply.
Fortunately or unfortunately, this is not possible to be really independent. Of course, depends on the country, but as we are talking about kind of the sea region, not only PV, but there is not so much options to have at your house like the wind power or the water. So with the PV, I can be independent at the level of 60–70%. Maybe with the car, with the EV car, I can extend for 10%. But talking about the big picture, meaning independency, cost, security, and the emissions, this is what I wanted to say. So to be really independent, not grid connected, this is first heavily cost. Secondly, in our region, it's almost impossible or unviable.
All right. Just a question to Zdeněk. In certain countries in EU, the waiting list to be connected the PV or on a household or even a large PV or battery storage, it's assuming almost a year or maybe more. This is number one statement. Number two statement, we see in Germany that the investment in a grid, distribution, transmission, is 1-0 more than what we see in Czech Republic in euro aspect per year. And finally, there's another chart which I have here prepared. We see the huge demand. This is sort of the bridge from the speech before from Goldman Sachs. Globally, the infrastructure investments goes 20% to data centers, and 18% to battery storage, and 11% to solar and wind. And we are talking about the major countries, the developed countries. All these will increase the needs to strengthen the infrastructure. And obviously, the strengthening infrastructure has the replication to increase the RAP. And at very end of the point, the increased RAP has the more expensive electricity for our end users. So all is this really means, is a decarbonization something what we want, and is it this what we are prepared to pay? Because if I look around, I'm not sure that everyone understands that the taking care of the planet is more than the belief.
Thank you. So yes, we need it. We need to pay that for sure. It's clear that it's not only about the decarbonization, but this is the way to be more sustainable. That clearly, I'm coming more from the grid business. It's costly. Clearly, it's just like Vladimír says that the grid is here developed for more than 100 years, starting just from the generation to the customer. Now we put another element into it in between, which also creates some obstacles and the difficulties for the grid operators. For example, also in Czech Republic is visible, it takes 6 years to double the investment to the grid. Yeah. So first one, it will be costly. And here in the distribution, maybe it go more in time, meaning that the cost will increase linearly, but it will be costly. It will be probably offset by cheaper electricity. The power says the market price of the electricity might be cheaper. Will be offset with more investment into the grid or into this tariff structure. But there is also one thing which is needed. You say that there is a waiting time to be connected, sometimes even more. if for the big investments, you might wait 5 years to get grid ready to adopt the needs. And here I'm happy that says ministry is taking care of it and trying to speed up the process, and that all elements are needed just to develop the infrastructure. But there is still one more element which need to be taken properly, and this is the security for the investors. It took a lot of money to invest into the grid, and I've been in one project in the past which was like $1 billion project, and we lost the security of revenues during the time of investment. So sometimes just to encourage the business to invest into the money, and I believe that they have the money, but also need to be followed by the securities that you will recover the money in time being.
All right. René, you want to
contribute? Thank you for this question. Just only numbers, yearly, our operators invest 28 billion Czech crown. Now they did analysis, I'm maybe also KPMG worked on this analysis, and they said that they will need, to increase this cost by 38% to almost 40% to almost 40 billion Czech crown per year. It's not just only connected with the renewables, but also it is connected, to modernization and etc. This is the first. But I think that the solution, how to solve it is not that you will linearly increase tariffs. The solution is that you will look for the solution that you can connect more customers, more renewables, more additional sources. For example, we launched, and it is half year ago, we launched that if you are above 100 kilowatt, that it is like, we call it, what is the name? Something like not 100% connection. It means, that they can, if there is a problem in the network system, they can reduce your input into network totally maximum by 5%, and this increase connection capacity in the Czech Republic. But the worst problem in the Czech Republic is that there is this huge queue. Now, actually, the operators sign contracts for 25 GW till 2030. 25. Now we have 340 megawatts in the wind, and we have 4 GW in the solar, and we would like to have 10.1 in the solar and 1.5 in the wind. So totally maybe 1.2 to 12 GW. But there is a queue for 25 GW, and the operators need to invest that they will fulfill this connection. And sometimes the investors decided, okay, we will leave this project and we will go there and there. And that's why we put it into legislation, new amendment, and this amendment, says that there will be special fee, and if you will not be connected in the time which is in your agreement, you will lose this you lose this fee. So this is first necessary step. We will use it also for existing agreements. There is a timeline 15 months, from legislation. So I think legislation will be enforced at the end of this year. This will be first. And second important step is a new tariff structure. And also Zdeněk mentioning a little bit, you need to make the tariff structure, I would say, more open to existing situation, because now in the Czech Republic, 80% of the total investment you are paying through operating cost and not through fixed cost. But the costs are fixed. And if you will do, this, I would say, small changing, also it will make a motivation that you will lose your connection capacity and you will say, okay, let's use somebody else, this connecting capacity. And this is the important, I would say, task for us to solve it, because there is a lot of projects whose are ready, whose are prepared, and they are just only waiting for connection. But in front of them, there are several another investors whose are speculating speculating maybe if the price of connection will be higher or the situation will be more positive for them, then they will have a huge profit on this.
René, thanks. It seems that the ministry is, well prepared for the upcoming development in Czech energy market. Vladimír, is it correct? Are you perceived that in the same way how René is presenting?
Yes, I fully agree. Yeah, because when I was in board, like a board member in Czech, yeah, it was the first boom of photovoltaic in 2008, 9, 10. Yeah. And it was the same situation, yeah. And this time, our authorities issue some regulation, yeah. But just now we have a second boom, yeah, and we have to manage it, yeah. Yeah, and yes, we are facing this situation, yeah. And I think that as a ministry, ERU, regulation authorities, and free operator of the grid try to manage it, yeah. But in the end, yeah, we are overbooking for the capacity, but in reality it will be 1/3, yeah. But how to manage? Yeah, we need some regulation for this, and I know that they are working on this, yeah. But it's a big problem, yeah, because how you should plan the investment in the grid when you are not in position that you should predict where will be this distributed energy system, yeah, how to invest, yeah. And in the end, the big changes in this grid system, yeah, who knows? In Hlavinka power plant, yeah, they will close this year, or yes or not, yeah. And again, it will issue some new question for this operating of this grid, yeah. That means we are in situation, yeah, it's not some kind of revolution, yeah, it's some kind of evolution. Be patient, yeah, because step by step develop this. And I think that we understand the problem, we describe the problem, and step by step solve this problem, yeah. But sometimes we saw that some people are nervous not to be so quick development of renewables, distribution grid, but it's impossible. Yeah? The last system developed 70, 50 years. Yeah.
Anita, we mostly touch the topics which are related to Czech Republic. Is the situation the same in Hungary?
I think ministry and regulatory has to support the green transition. That is a fact, and sustainability is expensive. That's a fact. In Hungary, we have above 3,000 megawatt capacity of PV. We just launched the program for biomethane, which has to be 600 million cubic meter in 10 years. We are supporting the wind generation, and of course the grid is essential. But also we have a program for the energy storage. We have a new launch for 400 megawatt capacity just to support the renewables. And in 5-10 years, we would like to increase it until 1,000 megawatt capacity. But I think it's one country. If we are talking about the Czech, if we are talking about Hungary, every country has an energy mix. And as you mentioned at the beginning, that there are negative energy prices in different periods, like Easter, we realized that we never have happened before, the very negative energy prices. So we have to understand that it's the European Union, and we have to harmonize our facilities. There is a program in the energy sector called Picasso program, which is harmonizing all the facilities in the European Union, which could help to avoid the negative energy prices, and maybe at the end of the day, with the battery storage, with the energy storage, we can decrease the energy prices, because it will be the final goal to make Europe competitive.
Anita, thank you. As we are approaching the end, I would like to wrap it up that I would give to every one of you 2 minutes time, maybe 90 seconds, that you would say what you expect from your local policymakers, what will happen with the next 12, 24 months. We in Czech Republic approaching the elections, so this is the right time, to say, look, this is what we are expecting from the new government that's going to happen in Czech Republic, that we are able to foster decarbonization or make an energy system more secure. As René is a policymaker, I would ask René, what he's expecting from the commercial segment as a right attitude towards the energy mix and decarbonization as such. Martina, if you can start.
Yep. From my piece of the machine, for the medium-sized, small-sized photovoltaics, battery storage, and EV cars, it's about to have the clear view on the next couple of the years, and somehow this is the enough. So to cleaning up the queue which each country faced last year ago, Greece has 90 gigs and so on and so on. So for the medium-sized PV, I would call it, we don't need so much grid connection capacities as the electricity generation injecting into the grid. It should be designed for self-consumption. So we need to cover the energy communities because we can share without any big efforts and so on and so on. So to have the stable view on the grid connection policy, and secondly, René already mentioned the new tariff scheme, which will be more motivating ourselves to maybe switch on the washing machine during the night, not during the morning. I don't want, of course, to do it by myself. I can have the AI or whatever on this, but for the future, I don't care if the washing machine is switched on morning or the evening. And having the 2 million washing machines in the Czech Republic, it helps to switch it. So for my self-consumption topic, stability, new tariffs, motivating these new business models or the new point of the view.
Vladimír.
I have simple idea, what I expecting, I expecting that we will have some agreement across a politician party and develop some energy strategy which will be fulfilled during the year, not election per election changing the mind of the strategy, And for René, it's some kind of dream work, because every election, the new representatives changing the strategy, priorities, etc., etc. But in the end, it's an energy sector, and it has some rules, and keeping for 10 years the same will give us the opportunity to reach the goal.
Zdeňku?
For me, clearly speeding up the permitting process and creating some incentive mechanism for the grid operators to adopt the change faster, which are, I believe, there are already discussions there. It might be different RAP for the different WACC for different investments, but just to switch more to these silicon investments, not to copper one.
Anita?
For me, it's very important to understand that this is energy, and energy production is just part, but we have to focus also for the whole value chain. If we are talking about electrification, e-mobility and electric cars without charging facility, it's not the future. So we have to focus for the whole value chain. Thank you.
Excellent. René?
I will answer 3 times. Firstly, from the view of a policymaker, I hope that the regulatory framework will be stable for longer period, that we will not come every year with differences. I think that it's very bad for both sides, for us and also for the investors. That's the first. Second, also from the perspective of a policymaker, I hope that we will finish. We have also biomethane. We started already notification of biomethane in the Czech Republic. We would like to have a 500 million till 2030 partially, high quality biomethane for transport sector, and the rest for heating and cooling sector. And we already started, discussion with the European Commission of capacity mechanism, because we will need, some regulatory framework for these gas power plants, because especially because of the volatility of the system. Now it's very risky sector. But if there will be, this mechanism, and now the era shows that yes, we can start this discussion, will be fine. So this is, from the perspective of policymaker. From the perspective of investors, I hope, because in maybe not today, but tomorrow, I think that I will launch, I am sure that I will launch auction for cogeneration, and I will launch auction for wind. We'll do it in 2 rounds. Totally this year we have there 1.8 GW in a cogeneration, and we have there 330 megawatt in a wind. And I hope that the investors will join, will participate, and we will fulfill, this targets which we have there.
Excellent. Therefore, we are reaching the end. Therefore, I would like to thank you to our speakers for interesting discussion. To wrap it up, we are praising for the long-term strategy. It will last more than 5 years or 1 election period. We are asking for more transparency and speed up process for application for the grid access, and what we heard from our policymaker, from René, we are here to launch 2 key auctions, one for wind and one for cogeneration, which I think is absolutely vital for our energy system and for incoming investment in the Czech Republic. Again, Anita, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, dear panelists. I think this was very eye-opening, and I'm super excited about the auctions as well. Now we will move on to a coffee break, but just before you leave, you do have the agenda, the participant speaker list, and also all the photos up to this point on here. So use away, and thank you very much for listening. Photo on the stage. Yeah. Can we do a quick photo on the stage?